or something, but today I'm going to tell you about October 2nd, 2004. October 2nd, 2004. And that is the day that I died. I'm going to tell you about the day I died. You know, and speaking of death, death makes you think of a lot of things, and I think a lot of times we think about the last things. You know, like I know when somebody has died in my life, I think about the last time I spoke, with them, or I want to know what the last thing that they said, was, or what's the last thing that they, did. But, there's a lot of things that you do for the last time, and you don't even know it. I'm not even talking about death. I'm not even talking about you're dead. There are things that we have done for the last time, and we didn't even know it. For an example, I have 3 kids, right? And I can tell you I have held all 3 of my kids. When they were babies, I held them like this. When they get a little older, you hold them on the hip, right? But there was a day that I didn't realize that I sat my kid down and I never picked them back up. You ever think about that? You held them at one time for the last, time, right? Or even something else that's maybe more trivial. You go to a restaurant and you eat there and it's maybe your favorite. And you don't even realize you're eating there for the last of the time, because little do you know they're going to close in a couple of weeks, right? There's a lot of things we do for the last time and we don't even know it. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to come back, to it. But before I tell you about the day that I died, I feel like I need to give you some back, ground. I think a lot of times people just assume if you're a pastor, you grew up in church, you were saved, you did the whole confess and believe and commit. You did that in the womb or something, right? No, I did not grow up in church. I didn't start going to church until October 5th of 2004. So it was a long, time. I did go some. I would have a grandparent that would take me here or, there. And I was telling the youth the other, day, I went with friends at times. But it was hard to get me to even go with, them. I had a friend once, and I'm going to tell you more about this in a little bit, but he finally got me to go. He was like, man, but, you would really like it. And I'm like, nah, I really wouldn't. I really wouldn't. And he would tell me that the youth leader was cool, and I was like, he's really not. Yeah, I bet he's not, And then he said the magic word. Well, girls. Wait, what? There's some good-looking girls in the youth. I'm there, brother. Why didn't you say? You should have started with that. I'm not going to tell you my whole life, story, but I am going to start with this. It's probably the most influential day of my life. It really dictated a whole lot of things. Most of you probably know I was a soccer player, and this is when I first started. I was in first, grade, and I'm out playing soccer. I'm on the red, team. And usually my mom was at most of my games. My mom and dad were divorced. My dad, the only really memories I had of him at this time was I got to go maybe once a month and visit him, but he was in prison. That was always rough. And I remember that was when, if you notice, I stutter some. That's when that started. It was at that time. I don't know why. I guess maybe it was stressful going and seeing your dad in that kind of place. But so I don't see my dad much. And I'm out on the soccer field, and I'm playing, and I look over, and on the sideline, there's my dad. He's there, And I mean, I turned it on. I don't think I ever played soccer so hard in my life, And after the game, I go up. I was real, sheepish. Hey, Dad, what's up? He's like, hey, son, it was good. I was like, man, that's cool. Dad said I did good, And I remember we had to stand in line. We were taking pictures. And I'm in line, and my friends are standing around talking. I'm like, guys, stop, look, but don't look. That's my dad over there, And they're like, well, that's my dad right there. Who cares, They didn't get it. I get my picture made, and the day got better. Because my dad says, son, I'm going to drive you home. Oh, wow. Okay. So quality time with Dad, just me and him. This is awesome. And I remember we were walking to the car, and like I usually do with my mom, I go to get in the back, seat, and he goes, you can sit in the front. See, this is why dads are so cool. I'm like, yes. I get in the front, and I remember little things. It's funny how the little things that you can remember, because I don't remember us saying a word. But the whole drive home, I was looking over at him. I remember he had his window down. And I was like, oh, I got to roll my window down. It was this kind, I was like, I got to roll my window down. And then he had like his arm on the window, being cool. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got to put my arm on the window, And then I remember looking down, and I could see his feet, and he had on cowboy boots. And I thought, I got to get a pair of those. I got to get a pair of them. I got to get a pair of cowboy boots. That is on the Christmas list now. So we get to our old trailer park, and for the first time, I'm not scared. With like my mom, we always we would gather our stuff in the car, doors are locked, and then we would unlock them and run in, I thought, man, let whoever come. My dad's here, right? So we park, or he puts it in park, and I start to get out of the car, and he goes, hang on a minute there, boy. I got to tell you something. And I'm thinking, can this get any better? Father-son talk. This is going to be good. I've heard of this. I've heard of other guys talking about how their dad yells at them because they didn't run hard enough. They didn't play good enough. He's about to do it. He's about to get on me. This is going to be awesome. And he says, son, I'm not going to see you anymore. That was it. He didn't push me out of the car. He just sort of nudged me. All right. I remember going in, and my sister, my mom, I guess, already knew, and she had told my, sister, and my sister and I just sat there and we cried, and I was sure I understood. I said, sis, it's okay. It's my fault. If I would have scored that goal, that's what it is. If I would have played better, that's what it is. He's embarrassed of me. And I'll get him back. Next week, I'm going to play better. I'm going to do better. But for, the next 15 years that I played soccer, he never even showed up. I remember I used to think that he was probably off in the woods or in the bushes, watching me. I remember I would have a really good, game and think he's going to come out and say, okay, you're good enough now. But that never happened. He wouldn't be the only one that would leave, me. My grandparents, my grandfather on his side of the family would abandon me a few years after, this. Oddly enough, over a soccer thing. But, I know for a long time I was just sad. You cry yourself to sleep and stuff, but, it started to turn into anger. It started to turn into hate, and not towards him. Not towards him, not towards me. Preston, why aren't you good enough? I mean, how horrible of a kid do you have to be that your own father doesn't want a relationship with you? And I remember when that was really cemented. When it really was cemented. It was when I was 15 years old. My mom came and picked me up at wrestling. And man, she was just so mad at me. She was just so upset, and I don't even really understand why. But I think some of it had to do with my dad. And I remember we were driving, and she was yelling at me. She was just, I don't remember. But we were right in front of Tennessee High. We were going like 30 miles an hour. Not that fast, thank goodness. And she's mad at me, and she's yelling at me. And then she said something that really stuck with me and resonated with me. She said, Preston, why can't you just die? Why can't you just die? And then she reached across and she opened the door. And it was scary because it was the seatbelts that automatically go forward in that day. And she just started pushing me. That is not the day that I died. But I wasn't mad at her. I agreed with her. I thought, what's the point? By the time I was 18, I had ran away from home three times. I was arrested once, spent a week in jail. I had developed a habit of cutting myself. I had a suicide attempt. I graduated high school with a GPA of a whopping 1.4. I had been suspended countless times. And I really think I was just like on this path. I wanted myself destroyed. And looking back, I can really see that God is trying to get my attention. And I usually give you more of the details of some of these bad things, like the pastor who visited me in jail, and I told him to get lost. And there's all these little stories, but instead of telling you those, I'm going to tell you something different. I'm going to tell you about a couple of blessings that happened in my life. And I've really thought about that. When God put it on my heart, I thought, God, is that really? And this is just what I felt, and I wrote it in my journal. It was like God just impressed on me, Preston, even when you wasn't accepting me, even when you were rejecting me, I couldn't help it. I had to show you some love. I had to let you know that I love you. I had to let you know I was waiting. And I'm going to tell you 3 blessings that really, I didn't realize it, but they would all contribute on the night that I died. So here's one. I went to that youth group, and I ran through all them girls, or dated a bunch of them. There was one day or an evening that they said, we're going to go on a trip, and we went to like a revival. And this was like an old Baptist church, So, we go to this thing. I didn't know what this was, but we go, and it's a revival. It's like what you think it is. There's an old guy up here. He preaches, and at the end, he has an invitation. And the whole youth group goes up to the front. And I don't go. I stay in my seat. And the youth pastor comes back, and he says, Preston, do you know what the youth group's doing there? Do you know why they're up, there? I was like, no, I am signing up for something. I don't know what they're doing, He said, they're praying. And I was like, well, that's good. He said, they're praying for you. Man, that really touched me. That really did. And that was enough to convince me to at least give in to the pressure that the youth pastor started putting on me to go up to the front. And I remember I go up to the front, and they're, they've got they grab one of the youth kids to sit beside me, and that kid's sitting there praying, literally with his hands like this, praying over me. And the youth leader is telling me like the Romans road. That's the important part. That ends up sticking with me. This is how you get saved. This is the whole thing. But it was kind of cool. It's kind of not. I don't know. But at the end, the pastor, there's all these people at the front, and he's going around the room like I'm sitting over here. He's going around the room. He's like, sir, have you given your life to God? And they're like, oh, yes, amen. And he's going around, and he gets to me, And he says, young man, have you given your life to God? And I'm kind of like looking at the youth leader. I'm like, nobody's saying anything. And I went, no, I didn't. And, after we left, the old pastor, I so wish I would have known his name and stuff, but he came out and stopped our bus and asked the youth leader if he could see me. And I got off the bus, and he said, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. He said, I'll never forget that. He was like, most kids your age would have just given in to all the pressure and then said, I'll deal with this later. He said, but I appreciate that. And I said, oh, you got it anytime. I'm good at letting you down, I started to get on the bus, and I just remember he grabbed me. He said, wait a minute. And he just looked at me, and he said, you're going to be okay. And I got back on the bus. The next blessing that God gave me was Amanda. Now, if you know Amanda, she was just as sweet then as she is now. I've probably unsweetened her, to be honest. And I think, God, how in the world? I understand how I got her. I was pretty good with the girls. But how did I keep her? God, how did you give her the patience and the strength to stay with me through so much? Right? All the trouble. And guys, I was trouble. I always thought it was ironic. Her mom, when she was little, wouldn't let her watch Garfield, that orange cat. Because Garfield had an episode where he had a devil on his shoulder. So she wasn't allowed to watch that. And I thought, my gosh, and then here you are inviting the devil in, because that's what I was. And then I don't want to get emotional, but the next blessing was Ashley. I'm going to tell you, when that doctor pulled her out of my wife and cleaned her off, he put her in my hands, and I just thought, wow. Oh, wow. This is love. This is what it feels like to really love someone. Like Amanda had shown me a little bit about what it felt like to be loved and to have somebody that would stick with you. But now I'm on the opposite end. Wow, this is love. I remember the doctor said, hand her to her mama now. And I was like, in a minute. I remember that the nurse came in and said, hey, she can sleep in the nursery till night. I said, no, that ain't going to happen. She's going to sleep in here. And then she wheeled her a little bed in and said, well, here's her bed. I said, she ain't going to need, that. I held Ashlyn all night. We have a picture of it there. I held Ashlyn all night. That's where she was. I talked to her. I told her stories. I told her stupid jokes, But I guess the thing with my dad was still with, me, because I can remember the first words I said to all of my kids. And with Ashlyn, right before I handed her to her mom, I pulled her up and I said, baby, I will never leave you, So God is giving me these blessings, and looking back, I think, God, what were you doing, giving me a baby for crying out loud? And but the time finally came that God got my attention. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. I really believe this was his last attempt. Just like one of those things where you're doing it for the last time and you don't know it, I believe this was it. And the Bible talks about this. It talks about sinning unto death. It talks about God turning people over. It talks about hearts being hardened. God is patient, but his patience, it does run out. And I believe God had really set this last attempt up, as you're going to see all those things I just said, how they all come together. So I was at home, and Amanda called me and just said the two saddest words that I've ever heard. She said, Christopher died. Christopher died. Man. Who was Christopher? Well, he was her 11-year-old cousin. I didn't know Christopher that well. I would hang out with him at family things because he was cooler than the adults, I don't even think the boy knew my name. He always called me Spiky because of my hair. I don't even think he ever knew my name. And again, one of those last times you don't know. His sister picked him up. They were driving home on Memorial. She got off the road a little bit, overcorrected, the car flipped, and he died at this hospital right over here. But something started happening right here. I wish I could explain it, but I can't. There was just something happening. And Amanda wanted me to go to the wake, where you go view. And there was something in me fighting me saying, don't go do that. Stay away from this. And I listened to it. I said, okay, Amanda, I told her I was sick. I lied. I was not sick. But I said, but I promise you I'll go with you to the funeral, which was the day after. So I go to that. And it was set up just like this. There was 2 sections. It was in like a chapel at the cemetery. And we go in, and I mean, man, this place is packed. I mean, I didn't know an 11-year-old could have so many people, so many folks, but he was popular. It was packed. And we come up to the front, so we would have came in, and we would have been coming right down here. And there was all her family and everything. And I said, good. There's no room. I said, hey, don't worry, guys. It's okay. I'll go find me a seat. I wasn't going to find a seat. I was going to go outside. I was going to go to the car and wait. But they insisted, no. We're going to make you a room. So everybody in the second pew had scooched down, and I was sitting over there on the end. And I've got this thing happening. And I think I was just listening to the wrong, voice, because I was like, okay, it's Saturday. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to think about there's a football game on. I'm going to think about that. Don't look. Don't look up there. Don't look at this. Don't listen to what that preacher's saying. Just, And I pulled that off for a while. Maybe the whole thing. But then, and I've always said I can't explain this. I don't want to say I heard an audible voice, but I didn't. The best way I can explain it is I felt a voice. Does that make more sense? I don't know that I heard it, but I felt it. But I'm sitting there and I'm not, And then, as I'm sitting there, it felt like God got right up in my ear. This is just what I felt. And said, pick up your eyes. You watch. You look. This has been done for you. I may not be able to explain the voice, but I can certainly tell you it got my attention. And I picked my eyes up. And man, I mean, the row in front of me, there was my wife. She's crying. There's grandparents. Why? That shouldn't be happening. Grandparents aren't supposed to attend their grandkids' funeral. There's a mom that is completely shattered. And I thought, man, they ain't never going to teach that boy how to drive. They aren't going to take his pictures for prom. And then at the front, there's a little casket. We shouldn't have caskets that small. And I guess I had caught the end because the pastor was pretty much done. And this is the last thing he said. And I feel like he was trying to give some encouragement. He said, I know Christopher was a Christian. He was an active believer. He said, and although this is a tragedy, maybe there's one person here that their life will change because of it. And that just made me think of what I had just heard. Well, I wasn't done fighting God yet. So we left. We go to my sister's house for the football game. And my brother-in-law were watching Tennessee and Auburn. That's who it was, I remember. And my brother-in-law goes, "What is your problem? What is wrong with you?" I said, "What do you mean, man? It's like you're not you. It's like you're here, but you're not here." And I said, "Dude, I don't know. There's something's happening. I don't know. I think I might be dying. I don't know." I said, "Dude, just give me a minute." And I walked away, and I grabbed Amanda and I grabbed Ashlyn, and I took them into this little bath room, and I stood Ashlyn right up on the sink. And I grabbed a hold of her and I hugged her because I didn't want her to see my face. And I looked at Amanda and I said, "What if something happens to her? I won't be able to handle that. I can't do that. I mean, this is it. This is all that I care. This is all that I love. This is my world. I can't, And Amanda, who, if you know her, she's emotional, cries at everything. She's probably crying now, okay? No tears, no emotion, very sure of herself, just says, "She'll be fine. What if something happens to you?" I said, "Well, let's just go home." So we go home, and I tell Amanda, I said, "Look, I'm going to get in the bed. Just check on me from time to time. Because I think I'm going to die. I mean, I think that's how bad this is." And Amanda's like, yeah, I will. I think Amanda kind of knew. But I get in the bed, and it's my death, bed. I don't even know it. And for the first time, I really have a conversation with God. And I would say an argument almost. "God, what is happening? What is this about?" And and it was the same feeling voice, but it wasn't loud. It wasn't booming. It was very soft, very loving. It was just kind of like, "Preston, I've been waiting for you. I want you. I love you." And this is really what I said. It's the way I felt. I said, "God, no, you don't. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares. God, everybody leaves me. And you'll leave me too." "No, I won't. I love you." And I don't know how long that went on. But I finally, and I didn't make no deal with God. I didn't say, "God, if you let me live," or anything. I thought, I don't care if I live 5 more minutes or 500 years. Okay, I'll live for you. I'll live for you. And I thought back to that revival night, and I confessed, and I believed, and I committed. And I did die. That's the day I died. That's the night I died. I died. That Preston, dead. And a new Preston was, born. I remember I got up. Whatever was happening was gone, and I was full of energy, and I got up, and I said, "We got to have a Bible somewhere, right? Like Amanda's got to have one or something." I found one of those big family Bibles. I just started reading. And I thought it was cool because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was supposed to be reading. There was 2 verses I found. One was in Psalms, and it says, it's God. He says, "I am a father to the fatherless. And then another verse I read said, I will never leave you or forsake you. God, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. Now look, we've talked a lot about me. I want to talk about you. Can you relate to my story at all? I think you can. There's some people that say, Preston, I can't. I haven't had these experiences with God. I promise you, you have. You just don't know it. When you look back, you can see Him at work. You can see Him pursuing you. Yeah, Preston, but gosh, nothing crazy. It ain't like some innocent person died for me. Yes, He did. Christopher didn't save me from anything. Christopher didn't die for my sins. Christopher was a reminder and a symbol for me of what Jesus did for you. Guys, when Jesus had those crown of thorns put into His head, that was for you. Right? When his hands were getting nailed to the cross, and He says, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they are doing. He's talking about you. God, they don't know. They don't know the path that they're on. They don't get it. And when He hung on that cross, I believe He thought of you. We do have the same kind of story. Now, like I told you, I really believe that was God's last attempt that He was making for, me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I think about Christopher. When he left the house that day, he didn't realize that was the last time he'd step into his room. His mom didn't know that was the last time she was going to hug him. His brothers and his sisters didn't know that was the last time they were going to play with him. He didn't realize that his last Boy Scout meeting would be the last one that he had. He didn't know he had just left his last day of school. And he was taking his last ride in a car. Maybe you can relate to me because you do feel that something. You have lived life your way, and how's that working? Maybe you feel that thing I was talking about, you don't know what it is. You can't explain it. I will. That is God fighting for your heart, and that is Satan trying to fight him off. But I'll ask you this. What if this is your last time and you don't even know it? What if this is your last chance? What if this is God's final attempt at your heart? Please don't let this moment pass you by. Guys, if you would, please let's stand. So, I'm going to address 3 people here in this room. There's some of you here and you are saved. You have no doubt. If you were to die now, if Jesus came back now, you know for a fact you are going to heaven. There is no, I think I'd squeak in or I'm on the line. Remember, there is no line. There is no fence. There is no gray area. If that's you, first of all, I'm super excited to hang out with you there. And you all remember, y'all know how to find me. The guy on the giraffe with all the Reese cups. I'm super excited. I'm super excited to see Jesus. But I'm going to tell you something. one of the first things I'm going to ask him is, where's Christopher? Can I go see him for a second? And I'll ask you, who do you want to see? I have no doubt if you're saved that you know somebody who, isn't. There's somebody that you know needs Jesus. And I'm going to tell you something. During this time, pray for them. And I don't mean say some, God, I hope you'll work it out. No. Pour yourself out for, them. The next person I'm going to address is just the person who's kind of off, track. Maybe you remember getting, saved. But man, you've gotten so far off track. That seems like a million years ago. Maybe you confessed and you believed, but you hadn't been committed for a long, time. If that's you, we can rededicate your life. We can get that commitment part done. And it's simple. We just have to say, hey, are you ready to repent and turn from this way and go a different one? We can take care of that. And then there's those who've never accepted Christ. You may say, Preston, yeah, I believe Jesus existed, but I haven't been living like I am a believer. I got two questions. What does he have to do? What does he have to do? He sent his only son. Imagine that. Imagine if you have kids, giving up your child, sacrificing them, letting them die. Gosh, you got to really love that person to give up your child. What's it going to take? And I guess the other question is, there a stirring in your heart? Is there something there? Is there something happening? You feel something, it's different, and like I said, I know what that feeling is. And maybe you feel Satan, you want to run out of here. Maybe you're like, me. Maybe you just now lifted up your eyes and thought, okay, now I'm actually listening. What's this guy talking about? I'm talking about you. And I get that feeling. Your legs are heavy. This little walk looks like impossible. But I want to try to take Satan's voice away. No matter who you are, no matter which person that you are, no matter what that you're feeling, this altar's open and you come up, here and take that first step of faith. If you're like, Preston, I can't. I'm just not able to. My legs are not going to work. I'm not going to be able to do it. You put your hand up and I will come to you. Or you can tell that person that's sitting beside of you, I need that. I need what he's talking about. I need to go up. I promise you, they will get you here, or they will get me, there. But whatever it is, whatever is on your heart, I would tell you not to leave here with regrets. And this is, I don't know why, this is the last thing we'll say. And maybe this is just God, maybe there's somebody there that's going to put it off. I don't know. First of all, if you have questions, you're like, I'm not ready to make that decision now. I need to talk. Me and you can talk right out in my office after this. But I want you to know, I know at a lot of churches, they'll pressure you here, right? This is where they tell you, you close your eyes and you raise your hand and we won't embarrass you, and then they embarrass you. I don't do that. There is not going to be a, hey, Jessica, sing that song one more time. No, we don't do that. Don't put it off. If you need to make a decision, then make it. So Jessica, if you would, go ahead. We'll start singing our song.